What? X Harper WWE2k19 Universe Mode. I'm going to be talking you through my special, unique, original ratings recipe that I have created in my Universe Mode, and I'm about to share with the world live. Now, let's get straight to it. This is going to be complicated. I'm going to need you to listen, to follow along, and to relax. Okay, I'm going to go through all the things that I do to make my wrestlers different in the game. There is nothing worse for me than fighting in my game Hollywood Hulk Hogan, fighting somebody who is a jobber like Heath Slater, is that he seems to reverse every move that Hogan throws at him, regardless of the game mode, regardless of the gameplay settings that I've changed and edited. It doesn't matter. Heath Slater seems to be able to topple Hollywood Hulk Hogan every time, and I'm fed up of it. So what happened last year when that happened to me, I decided to create my own recipe that's unique for the rating system of each of my superstars, so that jobbers are jobbers, the mid-carders are the mid-carders, the high-carders are the high-carders, the champions are the champions, the legends are the legends, and then the greatest of all times are the GOATs. What that means is that it makes the game a much better simulation when you're against a lower rated superstar, more authentic, as though you're in a real wrestling situation where if you're just going to walk over someone, it should only happen when it's a good wrestler versus a poor wrestler. So let's start. I've categorized it into about 6 different categories. There's a jobber, there's a mid-card, there is a high mid-card, there is a champion, there is a legend, and there is a GOAT level. Okay, so I'm going to go through each one and explain the differences in their ratings and why I changed the ratings to match each of those levels. So let's start with a jobber. The jobber level for me is anybody with a rating between, well, anything below a 74 to me is a jobber, okay? So Heath Slater is going to be my example. He's going to be the dummy, forgive the pun. And I'm going to work on the main menu first. So the main menu is simple. You can see that you've got like the attributes, the skills, the abilities. What you can notice with Heath is that he has 0 of skills, abilities, and payback. Sorry, he has skills, but he doesn't have abilities or payback. The reason why is that I don't think a jobber deserves those levels. He doesn't deserve those extra abilities that separate him from other superstars. So a jobber is simply there basically to get pinned. So obviously jobbers can fight other jobbers and their attribute levels change depending, so jobbers can still be competitive, but it's relative to the level that they're at in the game. So I don't give jobbers abilities or payback. That will change with different levels. I'll explain that as I go on. But in attributes, this is where things start getting complex. So what I do is attach the stamina levels to each of my levels. So stamina for a jobber is below 70. Is below 79. So stamina and stamina recovery for a jobber, they'll never be above 79. That's simply because jobbers are there to do a quick job. They don't tend to have that 25-30 minute match. They're certainly never going to be found in an Iron Man match because they're not skilled enough to carry for that long. What I also edit that's specific to the jobber mode is the pin escape and the reversals. So all of the reversal levels you can see are really low, but they're actually set somewhere between 30 and 59. Okay, so none of them will be over 60 or over. And again, the reason is so simple. Jobbers don't reverse moves. Like, they might get away with the odd reversal, but not in my world. A jobber is there to get beaten down and pinned and out of that ring as quickly as possible. A jobber versus a jobber is going to be an interesting match because they're on the same level. But when it comes to fighting anybody above the sort of mid-card level, jobbers don't tend to win. So that's how I've done that. That is my jobber. Now, let's show you the next level, which is the mid-card, okay? So this is a mid-carder. Now, in my game mode, Dean Malenko is a perfect example of a mid-carder. A great wrestler, by the way. I'm not taking anything away from him just because I've put him in the mid-card. I happen to love Dean Malenko. But the first thing you'll notice is that there's a payback. Anybody who's a mid-card or above gets at least one payback skill. However, mid-carders and high mid-carders do not get the payback level 2, so they only get payback level 1 if they're a mid or high card wrestler. Let's jump back up to attributes, and again, same principles apply. So all of this will start making sense as we go on. You can see now the stamina is vastly improved. So the stamina for my mid-carders, and if I've made a mistake, I do apologize. It happens. I've just been through all of these wrestlers' ratings, and it's been annoying to do. So yeah, the stamina for the mid-card or a high mid-card is 80 to 89. So as you can see, the stamina is vastly improved for anybody who's on the card, essentially. Jobbers are in and out of the ring, but the mid-carders and above, wrestlers in general, in my opinion, they're quite fit, and I think that the game doesn't do those wrestlers justice. It often puts them at like 60s or 70s, and I just don't agree with that. I think majority of wrestlers are at least an 80 or above, and if they're on the card, I mean, if you look at the cruiserweight division in WCW, Dean Malenko was pulling off 15-minute matches at times, and they were doing it with ease. So they obviously had a good base stamina, which is why I've set them to a much higher level. Now, what you can also see is that the pin escape and the reversals are a lot lower. They're still quite low. They're set to 60 to 69. And again, the reason I do this is the fact that, yes, Dean Malenko was a technical wrestler. Yes, he could reverse most moves in the book, but if you throw him in the ring with someone like Kevin Nash, he didn't reverse anything. His matches were reduced to literally the card. They would be either the first matches of the night, or they would be sort of the getting towards the higher mid card of the event and the show. So he was never good enough to be reversing moves and finishers from the top talent. He was basically what I class the mid-carders as are the jobbers to the stars. They are the jobbers to the goats. They're the ones that can pull on a great match. They can last 15 to 20 minutes, but you're not going to see them beat the tops talent. They're not going to beat a champion. Okay? So that's that level done. That's my mid-card. So the next one is my high mid-card level, okay? So the high mid-card level, I'm going to use a well-known wrestler called Daniel Bryan. Now, don't hate me for the way that I've rated these guys. These are my ratings. You can change them as you want, but I think the recipe should always stay the same. So again, high mid-card, what you can see here is 2 abilities now. Okay, so the mid-carder only got 1 ability, but the higher mid-card gets an extra ability, so I give them an extra ability, which helps them. They stay on the 1 payback, as I mentioned earlier. They don't go above 2 because they're high mid-card. And basically, the high mid-carders are the guys who are just on the verge of getting into the championship scene, okay? So this can change. Sometimes I edit. If I'm enjoying playing with a wrestler in the game, in my universe mode, sometimes I change and edit their settings. Sometimes I'm just watching the current product and I think that they've got better, so I just change it and edit it on the fly as I go. But for now, this is what I'm starting with. So Daniel Bryan's an 89 overall, and what that means, again, for his stamina, he's still in the 80s. As I said before, anybody in the mid-card or upper mid-card are between 80 and 89 for stamina levels, 89 being their max. But what you will see is that Daniel Bryan's pin escapes are basically plus 10, and I think you're probably getting to see now how I'm doing this. It's just simply plussing 10 onto the next level. So all of Daniel Bryan's are in the 79s. The reason for that is that he should frequently be reversing moves from anybody who's below him, but he should also be able to reverse, let's say, 3 or 4 out of 10 moves against a champion or even the greatest of all time. This is where you start seeing wrestlers who, because they're almost breaking into that championship scene, they should be able to pull off the upset. So to do that, you need to give them a higher reverse rate. Okay, so that is my high mid card. We're halfway through this now. The next level is champion. And for that, I'm going to go to a bit of an old schooler, Lex Luger. Okay, he's my quintessential champion. He's a guy who won title, but is never really considered to be the greatest of all time. Some people probably wouldn't even say he's a legend. I think that's a bit debatable. So for me, he is a legend, but he's a champion. He's somebody who wins the title, and his overall rating to be a champion is between 90 and 93. So this is quite high scoring, but that's what it is. So let's go in and show you. Now remember what I said, anybody who's a champion or above gets 2 payback abilities guaranteed. To edit on his, which is abilities, which I'll go into later. But what I will do, because he's a champion, he actually gets up to 3 abilities. So I'm going to go right ahead and give those to him now. I think that Luger was a technician. He wasn't the best, but he was still a technician. He would have had pin, and I'm going to go with a rope break as well. So they're the 3 that I would give to Lex Luger. Now, if we go into the attributes and look at this again, you can see the stamina is in the 90s. So there's an instant change. We've gone from 80s to 90s now. And this is because the champions are the guys that would last forever and a day against anyone. They would go the 90-minute matches, the 60-minute matches if they needed to. So all of my champions and above have the highest stamina ratings because they can do the longest matches. They also have, again, the champions are in the 80s when it comes to pin escapes. Okay? Yet again, you can just see that jump up, and so all of their reversals are in the 80s. That may sound unfair, I get it. It seems unfair that Daniel Bryan reverses less than Lex Luger, but when you consider the level that Lex Luger wrestled on when he was at the top of his game, I think you'll understand and appreciate that actually he would be able to reverse many, many more moves against much tougher and stronger guys and opponents. Whereas if you threw Daniel Bryan back into what I like to call the peak of wrestling, rather than just say the Attitude Era, it is the peak wrestling time, because it was when you had the most over wrestlers, but you also had the highest variety of quality wrestlers in any wrestling card. The fact that there were 2 companies that had over 70 wrestlers each that were incredibly gifted shows you how impressive the business was back then compared to nowadays, where you're looking at maybe, I could probably tell you maybe 20 to 30 wrestlers that are worldwide in any industry, in business, in any brand in wrestling that would qualify as a good wrestler. So there's a huge difference, and I use that as my sort of template and base. So that's my champion level. Let's save all settings because I made some edits. The next one is the legend setting, okay? So I call it legend. I could probably change it, but I like to call it legend. And the guy that I'm going to use for that, if my memory serves right, is Dusty Rhodes. Now, Dusty wasn't this high last year, but I overhauled my rating system, which I may go into another time, but not in this video. So the way that I get these overall marks, I've got a Google sheet on my computer, and it basically calculates, based on a few principal topics, it calculates their overall score. I'm not going to go into it because it's too complicated, and I'm already complicating things with this mode. Now, the thing that a legend gets that's really important, they get abilities of up to 5, okay? So they can have up to 5 abilities, and Dusty Rhodes shows that perfectly. They get the full payback menu, they get both of those, and then their attributes are obviously different as well. So the stamina of those, again, stays at 90, that doesn't change, but a legend gets into the 90s with their pin escape and their reversals. Now, what I've had to do here, you can see Dusty simply can't get to the level of 90 on some of his, so you just max them out. That's the point. The point is that they're as good as they can be in their areas of expertise and specialisms. I guess the reason he's not very good at reversals is because of the kind of wrestler he is, and he's probably a super heavyweight, which always restricts the way that they can reverse moves. So that's the way that I do the legends. And again, what I should have mentioned is a legend to me is 94 or 95. So it's this really niche section of wrestlers who, in my opinion, they're not considered the greatest of all time, but they're just outside that bracket. But they're also not champions. They're definitely better than the Lex Lugers or the DDPs or the Booker T's of this world. So they sit happily in between the two, and they float in and out. But they could still beat any GOAT. They could beat any champion. And so they just sit in this middle ground. There aren't many of them, but people like Dusty Rhodes are a great example of that. Now, finally, for the singles competition, you've got the final one, which is called the GOAT level, okay? Now, the GOAT level is anything above 95. So that's 96, 97, 98, 99, or 100. As it happens, none of mine reach 100. I don't believe in giving them full stats, to be honest with you, because then it would make them essentially the perfect wrestler. I don't believe in that. So what I'm going to do is jump to my top-rated wrestler on the game, which is Ric Flair. Woo! And he is 98 overall. Now, Ric Flair, you can see, my gosh, he gets unlimited abilities. That means as many as he wants. However, I do still restrict these, even though I say up to or unlimited. If he only had 3 abilities that he was realistically good at, then that's all I would have given him. But the fact is, Ric Flair genuinely has so many abilities at different levels. He is unbelievable. His paybacks are full. And then as you can see in attributes, the difference is stamina again is top, but the pin escape and the reversals again stays as high as it possibly can. Now, I never go max out with all of them. I try to be as realistic as possible. Ric Flair reverses a lot of stuff. The idea of this is simply that if I'm playing against one of the greatest of all time with anybody less than a champion, I shouldn't really be able to beat them very easily. In fact, most of my moves should be reversed, and I shouldn't complain about that. The reason I did this is because I wanted to create a game experience that was fair and realistic. Sometimes fair and realistic are banded together, and it's probably wrong that I use those two words. I want the game to be realistic. If I'm a jobber, I shouldn't be able to beat Ric Flair unless it's a work, unless it's part of my storyline. There's just no way that I should be able to beat him. So by separating these reversal levels, by separating the stamina levels, and then obviously the rest of the levels that make Ric Flair 98 and make Heath Slater a 70, the idea here for me is that I create such a competitive nature that if I was Heath Slater fighting Ric Flair, I'm just never going to win that match. Like, it should feel like a hard slog to win the match. Maybe a no DQ match I'd win because I can grab a chair and I can whack someone on the head with it, and I think that's realistic. If you're going to cheat, that's different. Anybody can beat anybody when it comes to cheating. But in a real straight up one-on-one traditional wrestling match, Ric Flair should never lose. 9 times out of 10, he should never lose to a jobber. And then those levels decrease, the chances of him losing increase as we go through the levels that I've showed you. I hope that makes sense for the single player. Now I'm just going to spend maybe another 5 minutes explaining my tag team ratings. You'll love me for this, but what I've done is I'll show you my tag teams. I've got loads of tag teams in my game, some of them old school, some of them stables, which means more than 2. Some of them are just straight up tag teams, but again, they've all got their overall ratings, and that's calculated, I guess, as a mean across the wrestlers that are in the stable. So what I'm going to do is show you a few different levels. There's a grey, a red, a grey, a blue, and a red level to this, okay? The grey level is obviously the lowest, and that is someone like American Alpha. So if I go back into this and find Chad Gable, who shouldn't be too hard to find, there he is. What you'll see is his ability gives him teamwork level 1. And the reason I've given it grey is because they're not at a level where they've won major titles, but they're a tag team. Like, there's a solid tag team. Now, there are wrestlers on this game in my universe who've been a part of a tag team, but because they weren't a regular occurrence, because maybe they just flitted in and out of having a tag team match, they never won any titles. It's like every now and then, the NWO Wolfpack that I've created, which is essentially NWO Hollywood. So all of the jobbers in WCW that became part of the NWO, like Buff Bagwell, he would have this kind of level because he's the kind of guy who would jump in a tag team. They'd never really win anything. They weren't a particularly high level, but he was regularly in a tag team. And what that means is that if you're a grey teamwork, you get an extra ability for free. So that's on top of any of the other abilities you have. And the reason I've done this is just the fact that to be a part of a tag team gives you a more rounded character as a wrestler. It makes you more rounded as a professional athlete. So what I've done is I give a bonus abilities based on the level of the tag team, and that obviously means that with someone like Chad, who was just a regular mid-card wrestler on my game, he only gets like one ability anyway. So for me, he got his extra ability and that's it. Like, that's all he needs. So that's him done. Now let's go up to the next level, which is blue. So a blue tag team would be someone like the Bar. And the reason I've given a blue tag team rating is because someone like the Bar, they win titles, they're good wrestlers, they're a consistent tag team, and they're a powerful tag team too. It means essentially that they've at least won a tag team title, okay? So I give them 2 abilities extra on top. Now, like I said before, these are not just... They're not just black and white. They don't just get 2 abilities. They get up to 2 bonuses. If I feel that I've already maxed out the abilities that they deserve, or that they would actually have in real life, then I don't give them extra ones for the sake of it. I simply just leave it as it is. And that's what's happened with Cesaro. I already think he's a technician and he's got pin combo. I don't really like anything else. The other one I was debating would have been like the immovable object. That would be the only other one that I would debate for him. But he can't even have it because I think it's to do with his weight classification. So even the other one that I would have given him isn't available for Cesaro anyway. Again, that you don't get any bonus payback stuff for this. It doesn't change your attributes. All it changes is the abilities that you have. So that is a blue tag team. Now let's go on to the final one, which is a red tag team. Now the red tag team essentially is the level above the blue. It's essentially a legendary or a GOAT stable or tag team. Easiest example that I can give of this would be the Dudley Boys. Okay, Dudley Boys, Hall of Fame level tag team. One of the best tag teams ever in the business. Different style to traditional tag teams, but they're definitely one of the best ever in the business. So what I do is, let's go to Bubs and show you what I've done for him. You've seen all my ratings now, so you can pause those and have a look later. Now, Bubba Ray gets 3 extra abilities on top of the abilities he already had because he's in a red tag team, which is the highest level. And again, those 3 extra abilities really help to level up that wrestler. And what that also does is it means that, you know, a wrestler who's in the same bracket, so Bubba Ray is 87 overall. He is classed in my singles ranking. He's in my champion class. He's in my high mid-card class. So what that means is that when Bubba Ray fights, let's say Daniel Bryan, not Daniel Bryan, he was in a tag team. Hello, Jordan Joshua. Joestar. When I look at somebody like Bubba and I compare him to another wrestler who's of a similar rating in that class, the difference is, and what separates Bubba from his opponent, is the fact that he has extra abilities. So the idea is, the greater the wrestler you are, the more well-rounded you are, the better and the higher your advantage is over your opponent. And all of this is to add up to what I said before. This is about total simulation. This is about having realistic matches with realistic difficulty levels, so that when I'm actually fighting in the game, it feels like this guy actually has advantages over me. And that means that I've got to think of different ways of fighting against them. It means I've got to think sometimes about cheating to win. It means that I've got to sometimes think about the abilities and the paybacks that I use myself. It all just adds to the realism of the game. For me, it works really well. When I've wrestled on the game, I've tried this out as I've been editing. Just to let you know, the women haven't been edited yet. It's been hard enough going through all of the guys. I've got to go through all the women after this. So all of the guys are done, and then I'm going to go through all the female levels as well. Some of their stamina levels will naturally be a little bit lower just because of physics and the way that the female and male body work. It's not me trying to be anti-feminist or whatever. It's just the way that nature is that guys happen to have a bit more stamina. They're a bit stronger naturally than women. That's not to say that the women wrestlers aren't stronger than some of the male ones. They absolutely are. So please don't be quoting me on crap stuff about that. So that's it. That really is it for this now. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to in this mode. What I'm going to go through next, I'll do a video that's more based around the tag teams, go through the stables, how they work. I'm going to be looking at other overall values. I'm going to be looking at ways of creating cores and doing stuff like that. I'm also going to look more into my universe mode, try and give you a bit more in-depth analysis on the championships I use, the shows that I have, how I've rated, done the ranking systems within shows. There's loads of more content that's going to come out, so just keep watching. Thank you so much for watching through this one. This has been a long 26-minute video. You've been a great audience. Thank you so much, and until next time, I'm X Harper. You can hit me up on Twitter at xharperco, IG at xharper.co. Let me know your thoughts. Please leave comments. If you don't like the video, tell me why. Don't just put the thumbs down, but actually tell me why you don't like it, and I'll try my best to improve as I go. Thank you so much, and until next time, whoop whoop!